All right, we're moving into the inspection and configuration of the values.yaml file. Okay, back to our terminal, and I'm going to do a VI on values.yaml. And again, I'm under OPT no name Kubernetes no name sec, right? So I want to look at the top level values.yaml because generally speaking, that's the one we usually modify. Okay, and the values trickle down to everything else, to all the other templates. All right. I mentioned earlier on that this file is pretty large. I think I mentioned in the thousands of lines, but it's only 732, and only, right? It's a pretty large file. It's not in the thousands, it's in the hundreds. The essence of this file is to contain all the configuration across our Helm chart, okay, our Helm chart package. So in essence, this is the only file you need to configure in order to make sure that it gets your no-name platform gets installed with your settings. Okay. It's a YAML file, so you understand it's white space dependent. And when I say white space, I mean spaces, tabs, new lines, and so on. Okay. Uh, there's global configuration, then there's ingress configuration, and so on. But most of the configuration is under global. Some of the I don't know, some of these configuration, for example, the application name is no name, the version 32820 LTS. This means that we're going to be installing the latest long-term support version of the no name platform. At least at the time of this recording, it is 32820. Uh, no name is enabled. You see true, and you may be wondering why the heck no name would not be enabled, because the same exact Helm chart is used to install the no name platform and the remote engine. Okay, and you flick a switch. Actually, you flick a few switches, but the essence is enable this false for the remote engine, enable this true for the no name platform. This values contains configuration for all the different components, for example, the engine, um, if I scroll down, the platform, and so on. These are all the different components and so on. Okay, and if I take you all the way to the end, if you press Shift G, you will be taken all the way to the end of this file, 732 lines. And if I scroll up a little bit, I should be able to find ingress. Here's ingress. Here's the ingress configuration, and it's enabled by default, and it contains information that are specific to Nginx, right? Specific to Nginx, specific to systems like AWS, right? There are certain things that are commented out. There are other things that are not commented out, but you can clearly see that this is Nginx, and generally speaking, this is for AWS. Okay, so you want to install it somewhere else, this has to be modified. Okay, modified. For the most part, yeah, they're very similar, but still needs to be modified. Okay, in our case, we're installing inside a K3D, right, cluster, so we need to modify it. We need to modify it. So this has to be false. Okay. Now, I can go ahead and modify this file, the values.yaml. I do not want to modify the files.yaml file. Why? Because it's so big, and the values and the um, essence of the values.yaml is to contain default information. You want to override them? Well, there are better ways to override them, right? There are better ways to override them. So I'm going to quit from here, and I'm going to show you how we can override them. For this type of exercise, I want you to go ahead and edit. There's another file that we already copied as part of a previous section. It's under opt no name, and it's called training no name helm.yaml. I want you to edit this file. Okay. And as you can see, these are the overrides. These are the overrides. I don't have to overwrite the whole thing. Just surgically override the values I'm interested. Pay attention. The lineage of my settings is identical to the values. I start with global, and then I enable active is false by default, and then I specify my secret and the password, that is, and the email of the administrative user, the very first user of my no-name platform. This is how I do it. It's under the backend section. Okay, and the image credentials, they're currently empty. We're going to replace them with appropriate values, right? We're going to replace them with appropriate values that have been provided to you, right, by me. Every time you request resources for NS302, I'm going to provide you with the VMs, the credentials, and the license file, right? They're all individualized. They all have a finite lifespan, 7 days. Okay, so I need to provision them and I need to provide them to you. Okay, the resource management, if you remember, this is set to false. It's true by default. It's set to false because we want to make sure we don't check for the recommended hardware requirements. If we set it to true, we don't have the necessary horsepower. We don't have the 16 CPUs. We don't have the 64 gigabytes of RAM and so on. Okay. And ingress, of course, is disabled. Is disabled. We do not want to use the ingress that it comes bundled with the Helm charts. Okay. The easiest way to update these values, line 12 to 18, is to delete these and copy and paste what I have provided you in the email. So I'm going to delete this, double D to delete, double D, double D, double D, double D, double D, double D, right? That's how you delete lines in VI. And then I'm going to press I. I changes the mode from view only to edit mode inside VI. Okay, so I press the letter I, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste the credentials that I have generated for these recordings. Okay, and I'm going to just paste. Okay, that's it. There's only one thing I need to correct, right? When you copy and paste these credentials, you got to make sure you're on the right, you're formatted the right way. And I'm not formatted the right way because my image credentials, they should be a child of global. And right now it's at the same level as global. So I need to go all the way to the beginning, one space, two space. Now it is a child of global. You put a single space, YAML is going to be misformatted, malformed. You're not going to be able to install your no-name platform. You're going to get errors. You're going to get errors when you run the helm command, of course, not now. Okay. So now we're good to go. So be careful when you copy and paste these image credentials. Here's a tidbit that I've seen it happening sometimes, but not always. Sometimes you may need to include all the strings inside quotes. Doesn't happen very often, but sometimes you may need to do this. So the registry, enclose it inside quotes. The namespace registry, enclose it inside quotes. Same thing with the username, same thing with the email. It happens to be the same exact value. And by the way, the username, the email will have your name, right? In my case, George K _ training at nonamesecurity.com. Okay. That's it. That's the only addition we need to provide in here. So we need to exit, edit mode. You press escape. You're no longer in insert mode. Colon W to write, Q to quit. Just for our sanity, I'm going to do a cat OPT no name training. Just to make sure that my values are present. Okay. Just to make sure my values are present. With this, we have concluded this section. We're ready to install, eh? We're ready to install. And I need to go back to my slideshow. Section end, guys. Section end.